Hello everyone and welcome to the world of Isekai. If you have already seen the title or thumbnail, you already know what I'm talking about, right? So let's get started right from the beginning. Luffy is only 7 years old and he's currently bickering with red hair Shanks to take him out into the seas for adventure, and he's really hopeful that Shanks would take him out, but Shanks, as usual, he did not care about his words and he did not want to take Luffy with him at all, and they kept bickering for quite a while until a bandit named Higuma enters the bar, and he also starts bickering, or rather he start making fun of Shanks and even pours the wine over Shanks' head. And even though he is doing quite a lot of hateful things, this does not pisses off Shanks, and in fact Shanks simply ignores it and laughs it off. But Luffy is not happy, okay? Luffy is not happy about this, and Luffy shouts at Shanks, and looking back at Shanks, who did not care about it, he simply sits on the chair and he starts eating a devil fruit that was in front of him. And at this moment Shanks also realizes that Luffy was eating his devil fruit, and he tries to stop Luffy, but Luffy had already taken a bite, okay? So at this moment he tries to spit out the fruit from Luffy, but when he goes to touch Luffy, his hand simply passes through Luffy's body and Luffy turns into particles of light. After Shanks quickly removes his hand, Luffy's body returns to being a normal body. But at this moment he was confused because he still remembers everything. He could feel his own body turning into the light, but he didn't know what exactly happened. He did not know much about light or particles or anything, or even devil fruit. So he looks at Shanks with confusion, to which Shanks simply replies that you have eaten Pika Pika No Mi, which makes you light man, and you can travel at the speed of light, you can shoot lasers out of your hands, and you can even create light constructs. And when Luffy hears laser, his eyes starts beaming and he excitedly tries to shoot laser out of his finger, which he succeeds, but the laser pierces through the bar, and he immediately realizes that it was not something he should have done, and he quickly apologizes to Makino, who was near him. Luffy wanted to play more with his devil fruit, but he realized that he could not control his powers at all. Sometimes he would shoot a powerful blast of laser light which would cause immense destruction, and sometimes he could not even turn himself into light, which makes Shanks quite trouble, because this Logia power was something too powerful for Luffy. Although it could prevent him from getting hurt by those who cannot use haki, it could also cause quite a lot of destruction, and in case he could not turn himself into an element or light when his opponents attacks him, he might hurt himself. So Shanks decides to teach Luffy how to control his devil fruit properly, and for this they go to another island which was an empty island, where they started training for 2 months. Shanks was not going to train Luffy for more than that because he had his own adventures, but he did teach Luffy the basics of his power and another power called haki. Though he only introduced haki to Luffy because he had to literally punch Luffy to make sure that he could control his power properly, and for that he had to introduce haki into Luffy's mind. And knowing that there was a power which could hurt him, Luffy decided to learn about this haki even more, and after learning about it a little bit, not a lot, but at least basics about it. He starts training even after Sang sleeps. And you might ask, what about this straw hat, right? And at this moment, Sanks is leaving, but he's not truly leaving this windmill village and entering the Grand Line. He is still moving around the East Blue. So during this time, Luffy trains his powers while Shanks lives for quite a while, and after 6 months, he returns to the village, and they finally bid farewell to each other. And everything here happened the same. Luffy still cries in front of Shanks, and but he did not ask Shanks to take him into this journey. So when Luffy declares that he would become a pirate king, Shanks eventually decides to give him the straw hat, and after that he finally leaves the windmill village. And you might be curious if Shanks has already given the Pika Pika no Mi to Luffy, and he also gave the hat to Luffy. What about Gomu-Gomu no Mi? Because we know that there is a special meaning of Gomu-Gomu no Mi, which is not exactly Gomu-Gomu no Mi but rather Hito Hito No Mi model Nika, and we know that Shanks knows about it, and he purposefully left the hat for Luffy because Luffy had eaten the Gomu-Gomu no Mi. And during this time, Luffy was not the inheritor of Gomu-Gomu no Mi. In fact, he had eaten the Pika Pika no Mi. So Shanks should not have left this hat to Luffy, but he did because he simply liked Luffy, and because Luffy had the same dream as his captain. And even though there was some kind of power within Gomu-Gomu no Mi that he thought it would be good for Luffy to eat, he did not care much. And after all, Roger was able to become Pirate King with his haki alone. So he believed that with an overpowered devil fruit like Pika Pika no Mi and enough haki, Luffy could also change the world for the better. But at the same time, he had also met another kid by the name of Podcast DS, and he had given this fruit Gomu-Gomu no Mi to this kid. But the only problem is that he did not feel that kind of free spirit and that kind of dream or even that kind of vibe from this kid, like his captain. Instead, this vibe came from Luffy, which made him give the hat to Luffy instead of Ace. So Luffy is still the inheritor of that straw hat, but at this point in time, Luffy and Ace had not met up, and Shanks only found Ace because of a certain coincidence that I want to include in this story. That's it for Ace and Shanks encounter. But even though they had that encounter, even though Ace ate that devil fruit, Luffy still had more of a connection of a mentor or even a guide with Shanks rather than Ace with Shanks. So the story would be a lot similar with that in mind. So let's skip forward to the age of 17, where Luffy finally decides to leave the village. And you might be curious there as to why I'm not going to include the interaction of Luffy and Sabo, because I don't think that would change a lot except Luffy simply going around using his Logia power to do anything he wants. I don't think a lot will change. So I would still like to keep it simple and same. But from this moment on, we'll have a lot of changes in this story. So let's truly get started from this moment on. And from this moment, Luffy would start moving with his light speed, trying to find Kokoyashi village, because he has made a friends with a girl called Nami who lives in Kokoyashi village, and because he had freed Kokoyashi village from the rule of Arlong. So you might be curious as to how this happened, right? So let's go on a bit of flashback and talk about it. One day, when Luffy was only 12 years old, he was moving around with his light speed all around the East Blue when he eventually stumbled in the Kokoyashi village. Because of extreme hunger, he could not maintain his light form for a long time, and during this time he met a girl whose name was Nami, and she had another girl or a sister, and they were living alone by themselves, and they were still nearly at the same age as him. They quickly tried to accept each other, and Nami gave him some food to help himself up, and after eating some food from her, Luffy did get resurrected with power, a lot of power, and they talk about their lives. At this moment, Nami was not clear that Luffy's goal was Pirate King, and Luffy hadn't told her that. He only introduced his name, and as they talk more about their lives, Nami mistakenly revealed about Arlong and how he is ruling the village that she lived, and this pissed off Luffy. Obviously, he was not going to let a pirate rule this village where a girl who gave him food lived in misery, and he said that he would defeat Arlong for her. Nami was in shock as she did not believe him. Instead, she tried to cover his mouth so that his words won't get heard by other people. And at this moment, Nami was not as hopeless as when she was 17, but she was still hopeless about getting rid of Arlong. So she feared that Luffy would die because of what he said, and she did not want this person to die, or rather Luffy to die this easily. But Luffy simply explained that he had the power to pretty much do anything in the East Blue unless there is someone who has came from the Grand Line. And after Nami revealed that Arlong was also from the Grand Line, Luffy was a bit serious, but after learning more about her situation, Luffy decided to fight. He was not going to back down that easily. So, even though Nami tried to convince him, he did not care. He simply went to Arlong and kicked his ass with his Pika Pika no Mi, and it was extremely powerful. Like, with a single shot of laser, he was able to injure almost every Arlong pirates except for top two commanders, commanders like Hachi and Korobo. I think his name was Korobo, and of course Arlong too. But with his light speed kick, he was pretty much able to decimate both Korobi, and Hachi. And after simply destroying them, he also fought against Arlong. And Arlong was a bit clever with his tricks. He tried to use the seawater to fight off against Luffy, but Luffy still had a trick of his own. He was sensing all of Arlong's movements with his observation haki, and with that he was able to quickly dodge all of Arlong's attack and use his laser lights to destroy Arlong with explosions of laser light. And after Arlong tried to hide under the sea, Luffy could not control himself, and he flies up into the air. He crosses his hands and he releases his most powerful attack, blinding destruction of heaven. several of the light based attack, several of the laser lights brushed out of his arms and fly off toward the sea. Even though he was literally inside the sea, those light particles could still pierce under it and destroy his body. They were coming in such a high number that almost over 100 laser light struck him and destroyed his body inside the sea. And it also destroyed a lot of other people, other fishermen who were near him. It even destroyed some of Arlong's base, and Luffy finally freed Nami. Before that, I would like to say I did change the name of that attack and call it Blinding Destruction of Heaven instead of calling it Yasakani no Magatama, which is really hard to call. I could say it Yasakani Sacred Jewel, but I don't think it would made a lot of sense. Instead, Blinding Light of Heaven sounds way cooler. And so, for since this is the attack of our MC, I'm definitely going to make some changes into his name. And so it after that, Luffy freed Nami from the rules of Arlong. He also destroyed Arlong pirates. And when Luffy finally revealed his dreams to Nami, at first she was hesitant, but she eventually agreed to be his partner, and he got his first partner after, without even going to the siege. And she was it. She was that first partner, and now he was trying to go to Kokoyashi village to find her, because he promised her that after he turned 17 he would find her and they will sail together into the Grand Line. And this is where I'm going to end this video right now. If you really enjoy this video, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, and if you want more, comment down below.